Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Tendring District Council Special Planning Committee. The committee meeting is being recorded. It's also going out live, which Emma has just confirmed that live stream is on. And the link to the live stream can be found on the council's website, www.tenderingdc.gov.uk/live meetings. For the purpose of the recording, I will introduce everyone. I'm Councillor Maria Fowler. I'm the Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I will introduce the other members of the committee separately. Councillor Alexander.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Everett.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor McWilliams.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Smith.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Sudra.
Good evening, Chair.
Councillor White.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Wiggins.
Good evening, Chairman.
Thank you all. The council officers assisting us this evening are from Committee Services Bethany Jones, and from Leadership Support Emma Howard. From Planning Services, the Planning Officer, Senior Planning Officer Jacob Yasma, the Planning Manager John Pateman G, and the Director of Planning Gary Guyver, and our Planning Solicitor Mrs Joanne Fisher. Changes to the agenda running order, there are none. Each applicant will be presented by each application will be presented by the officer, followed by public speaking. The public speaking in the order of the applicant or agent. Any members of the public who have already asked to speak for or against the application, then be followed by a speaker from the town or parish council, and finally the ward councillor. Members of the committee will then have the chance to question the officer. Once all questions are answered, the committee will then debate. When all the points are discussed, finally I shall ask if we have a resolution, and then call for a proposer and a seconder, and we will then vote in accordance with the normal rules. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence and substitutes.
Thank you, Chair. We only have one apologies for absence, which is Councillor Placey, with substitution of Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. And at this point, I will just welcome back Councillor Linda McWilliams, who has sat on the Planning Committee at the same time as I did in the last 2 terms. Welcome back, Linda.
I say thank you so much, Chairman. It makes
welcome.
me feel a lot better.
Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any? Councillor Wiggins.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare an interest in the application 22/020764, as it's in my ward of Alresford and Elmstead, and I'm not predetermined.
Thank you, Councillor Wiggins. Item 3, questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38. Bethany.
Thank you, Chair. There are none today.
Thank you, Bethany. Item 4, report the Director of Planning, A1 22/02076/FUL, land north and south of A133 Clacton Road at Finches Lane, Elmstead. And to present the application to us this evening is our Planning Officer Jacob Yasma. Jacob, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this application concerns a site, quite a large site, 2 sites in fact, north and south of Clacton Road. And the proposal or the application in front of you is a hybrid application, but it's in effect a full application. And I will return to the details in terms of why there's why it's a hybrid. There's a full and an outline element. The full element is for 86 residential dwellings on the north side of Clacton Road, including new access. And then there's also 40 dwellings proposed on the south side of Clacton Road, using an existing access that you saw on site today. The proposal, the full element will also include the construction of a market field grow use. From here on, I will refer to that as the MFG use. That's a Class E commercial / Class F1, which is educational use. And that MFG facility will include a multi-use building, a reception office, a workshop, a 65 space car park, as well as ancillary landscaping and outbuildings. And then you have an outline element, but it's in fact, it's almost a detailed element because everything can be considered tonight except for landscaping. But the outline element is for mixed-use Class E commercial building or buildings up to 1,600 square meters, as well as a 53 space car park, and that is this site there on the screen there for you. So it's two sites, two parcels, one large parcel that north of Clacton Road, and then there's a smaller parcel located on the south side of Clacton Road. The area in blue is the Chatterwood development, residential development that you saw today on site, and that's also in the applicant's ownership. The next slide is an aerial. It shows the ever-changing character around that southern parcel. So there's a residential development to the south of the site, Chatterwood, as well as a smaller section of residential properties, the Hills development. Then there's the Landswood Business Park that you saw on site today to the west, and the larger parcel on the north side of Clacton Road. The next slide we've included, it's kind of similar to the previous one, but it's more three-dimensional, and it's further zoomed out. So it's kind of hovering above that southern part of or south of the application site, looking in a northwestern direction, and it shows the two parcels, the application site in red, and that proximity to nearby Elmstead Market. I think it's a useful slide because the easternmost settlement development boundary of Elmstead Market is located roughly in this area here, some 350 meters away from the westernmost boundary of the application site. So that distance is about 350 meters. So this slide shows the proposed site layout plan. As you've seen today on site, it's a big site. There's a lot of different elements here. So I appreciate that this is this shows an overview of the development proposal. But in summary and at a high level, there are three different key elements proposed here. Which is the market field grow use, the MFG facility along in this area here to the west. And then you have the commercial element here, which is the outline element that I referred to earlier. And then you have the 126 dwellings in this area here to the east, and then that southern parcel, which will contain 40 dwellings. Now in the next three slides, and just to give the presentation a little bit of structure and an acknowledgement that it's a big scheme and there's a lot of things. So the next three slides will zoom into these three areas individually. So taking it sort of in a clockwise direction, we're going to start with the MFG use, and then we'll go over to the central part, zoomed in, and I'll talk you through what's proposed there. And then this eastern section, and then we'll end with the southern parcel. So this is the proposed market field growth facility in that western section there. Now I've included a little inset map there just so that you know where you are and which part of the site we're talking about now. So what is MFG? So MFG is an organization dedicated to providing exemplary education for children and young people with special educational needs. Now the applicants, the MFG facility proposed here will include a skills training center which will include employment facilities and a library, all situated to the north of this largest site. And that MFG facility will occupy an approximate 5-acre area. The main focus of the MFG facility will be to provide employment opportunities for post-16, I call them young adults, with special educational needs. In terms of the actual development of the MFGUs, it will include a multi-use building here, centrally located in that area there. To the north, there will be a reception building. And in between these two buildings, there will be an accessible play area, an outside seating area. There will be workshops along this western boundary here, as well as a car lodge building, compost/refuse storage area there, and animal pens. And then importantly, this land use will also include large areas allocated for horticulture beds and a plant nursery, which will occupy these areas here, as well as an orchard, wildflower meadows. There will be an outside kitchen area, as well as car parking and various footpaths and paths across the site. Now, moving over to that central part of the northern parcel. So we are now looking at this area here. So this central part will include the main access into the northern parcel there. I've pointed that out on site today. It will also include the commercial element, the outline element, all matters to be considered tonight except for landscaping. And it will include obviously a section of the 86 dwellings proposed in this northern parcel. I just want to point out the pedestrian link along this northern section, as well as shared pedestrian and cycle link or links into the site of Clacton Road. Various additional tree planting are proposed, as well as a new or improved hedge along Clacton Road. Now, moving on, this next section is this is the eastern part of that northern parcel. So we are now in this area here along Clacton Road, north of Clacton Road. And this section will include the locally equipped area of play, as well as the public or site public access open space area, including footpaths, as well as additional tree planting. The northern parcel will also contain a mixture of semi-detached and detached properties, all set in spacious plots, as well as an improved hedgerow along Clacton Road and a swale feature along this southern boundary. The southern parcel, this is now next to the existing Landswood Business Park, that will accommodate the remaining 40 dwellings to make up the 126 dwellings. So this southern parcel will utilize the existing access of Clacton Road, and then access will be via a newly constructed roundabout and into this kind of rectangular loop road section, as well as the southeast-northwest road. This parcel will accommodate a mixture of semi-detached, detached, and short terraces. The next section of the presentation, and I'm going to be really brief on these because they just contain photographs of the site and the surrounding area. So that's standing in the area where we stood today, looking in a southeastern direction towards the smaller parcel where the 40 dwellings will be located. This large tree will be retained as part of the development. This is standing on the existing axis, looking left and right. Just shows the visibility along that straight section of road. Next photo. So that's standing on the northern boundary with your back towards Elmstead Market, looking in a southern direction over that northern parcel. So the land gently slopes down to the south, and the MFG facility will be in the foreground with the houses in the background in terms of this view. This is just a map showing the extent of the tree preservation orders. So I've pointed that out to you today as well. There's a mixture of oak, hawthorn, and holly trees along that sort of northeast facing boundary that are now subject to tree preservation orders, as well as the 2 oak trees along Clacton Road, T1 and T2. This is standing on Clacton Road, on the north side of Clacton Road, more or less where the new access will be located. That's again looking left and right. It's just to demonstrate the visibility. This footpath, as explained on site, will be widened ever so slightly, and there will be improved cycle facilities, as well as a pedestrian toucan crossing, linking the northern parcel with the southern parcel, more or less in this area here. And then this is a couple of images standing on the southern boundary of the site, which is the lowest point of the northern parcel, looking in a northern direction and looking eastwards towards where the locally equipped area of play will be located in that area there. That's an existing farm tract. Right, so now we're moving into more detailed slides and drawings. So this is just the next part of the presentation is just to demonstrate to you the mixture of architecture and the various build forms that will be implemented across the site. So we are again back to the MFG facility in this area here. This is the multi-use building, and we are showing you this specifically in isolation now because it's a really important building on the site. It's an important building because it will form the first thing, a key vista as you enter the MFG facility from this newly created access road. So you will see this this elevation as you drive into the site. It's a very restrained design. It incorporates a lot of organic materials, a pitched roof, some clever design features, as well as a highly glazed front and back elevation. And that's a floor plan of this multi-use building. Again, it will contain the key land uses, so including the publicly accessible library in this area here, a shop, bakery, WC facilities, a kitchen area, food preparation area, servery, and a cafe. The outside seating area will be next to this multi-use building. So this is the reception building. So you are in this area here on the MFG site. So that's a similar building just to the north of the multi-use building. And as you can see, it will be very similar in its architectural language. So now we're going, this is just a floor plan of that reception building. So it will contain meeting rooms, as well as the main reception area and some toilet and changing facilities. This is the workshop building located along the northern boundary of the site, so in that area there. And this is the cart lodge building in that northeastern corner, as well as the animal pens and the refuse storage and compost area. That's all. The various locations are indicated on this inset map. The next 4 or 5 slides are computer-generated images of the MFG development. So this is that main reception building as you come in along that access road with the car parking area, and the multi-use building with the main reception building to the right there. This is the animal pens with the multi-use building in the background. This is hovering above that southern area of the MFG facility, looking over the site. It shows the development of this part of the development, in including all the buildings and all the different orchard areas and flower beds and so on. And this is another aerial. And then moving on to the commercial element. This is the proposed elevations, 2-story building up to 1,600 square meters of commercial floor space. And this is the various house types across the site. So there's a rich variety of detail, house types. We have taken you to the Chateauwood development, this development will be very similar to that development in terms of the house types that will be incorporated. More house types. That's the short row of 4 terraces to be located on the southern parcel, and the larger corner plots. These are the larger 4-story dwellings. This is a street scene of Clacton Road. So along the top there, it's just to demonstrate the gaps between the dwellings. That's the new access point. So there's the large corner plot, corner dwelling, 4 bedrooms, and that's the 2-story commercial development in that key position fronting Clacton Road. And then finally, another aerial, another computer-generated image looking across and over the MFG facility. Right, so I need to just refer you to the late rep document, the late paper. So in summary, there is additional information tabled under Appendix 1, which contains a representation from Councillor Carlo Guglielmi, as well as the planning agent representing the applicant, Christopher Board. And then there are updates in terms of the time limit conditions. So in respect of conditions 1, 3, and 4 of your committee report, the applicants have provided additional information in terms of the extent of all the highways works required and the timescales involved. So we are satisfied that this may impact implementation times. So with this in mind, officers recommend changes to the timescales in conditions 1, 3, and 4, basically to revert back to the standard timescales. So 3 years instead of 1, 2 years instead of 1 in terms of condition 3, and 3 years instead of 2. I can return to that just to give clarity. And then the other update is to do with, so we have recommended a 12-month time limit for the LPA and the applicants to complete the Section 106. However, this scheme, due to its size and due to the fact that it's a major, requires consultation with the Secretary of State. So in the interest of fairness and to not to timescales, we need to, we recommend amending the 12-month timescale for that, for the completion of that Section 106 from the date of the Secretary of State response, assuming that a response from them is to not call the application in. And then the last 2 amendments is just a minor change to the renewable energy condition. The 3 areas in bold are the areas that we are adding, and that's just to reflect the most recent version of the LPA's model condition on renewable energy and energy efficiency measures. And the last update is to slightly amend the landscaping scheme to include the need to provide details of any access gates and, or where necessary, any security gates as part of boundary treatment landscaping works. So, you would have read the report. There are strong levels of support for this development proposal, but there's also letters against this, letters objecting to this development proposal. They are all summarised and responded to in your committee report. The Parish Council returned a neutral stance. We've given you a very detailed report, but there's one section in the report that I want to highlight, and that is the planning balance and conclusion section. So your office's view is that there is clear policy conflict in terms of the permanent loss of very good quality agricultural land and the landscape harm that will ensue to the north of Clacton Road. So currently the site, that site, the northern parcel, is an agricultural field with decent views towards open countryside to the north and to the west. The application has also failed to demonstrate that the commercial element of the proposal will not have an unacceptable impact on Helmstead Market Village Centre and the nearby town centre of Brightlingsea. However, in your office's view, the weight given to this particular area of conflict is tapered because the LPA acknowledge that the immediate area around the application site has evolved over the last 4 years with the business and the housing development. We have also given weight to the Class E commercial buildings in that it will contribute towards providing a localized shop and other Class E services that will assist in serving the growing population in the area southeast of Helmstead Market. Your offices have given further weight to the commercial scheme previously approved but not implemented, and our view is that this development, in terms of the commercial element, will essentially be replaced by this proposal, or this proposal will essentially replace that unimplemented commercial element. This, however, does not overcome the policy conflict identified in the Principle of Development section of the report, and significant weight is attributed to the rest of the harmful elements and the resultant policy conflict. We apply significant weight to these harmful elements. However, as also set out in the assessment section of the report, the justification for the 100% market housing lies in the viability information submitted and confirming that the proposal cannot support any affordable housing. Or put differently, the houses will fund the MFG facility, which will otherwise not come forward. So against these harmful elements, there are benefits to the scheme. And we see the benefits as a much needed special educational needs facility in the form of the MFG use, the Class E/Class F1 use. A use that will be secured and to remain, or that element to remain as education in perpetuity. That will be secured in the legal agreement. Other benefits include the provision of a library accessible to the wider public, as well as positive benefits to the local and wider economy through direct and indirect job creation and retention, both for the workers at the facility, but also during construction, and also for the students of the facility. Because there is clear evidence that such a facility improves life chances for students of institutions such as the one proposed here. Your office's position is that these benefits would be considerable, and in the planning balance, very significant weight is attributed to them because of the clear demonstration of need for this MFG use. The 1,600 square meters of new Class E commercial floor space and the commercial floor space included in the MFG facility has the potential to support economic growth in the district. And this is also an element that, to our minds, weigh in favour of the scheme, and some weight is given to this. The provision of 126 market dwellings, in our opinion, adds very little weight in favour of the proposal because the council has a very strong 5-year housing land supply position. But this is nevertheless a benefit that weighs in favour as an benefits. Nearly there. The weight given to the substantial benefits just mentioned is considered to very marginally outweigh the significant weight given to the failure of the development as a whole to comply with the statutory plan-led approach. The significant weight given to the landscape and character harm, and the significant weight given to the landscape and character harm. Accordingly, the scheme is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions and the legal agreement, which secure a significant number of things. But I just want to highlight 3 or 4 things that the legal agreement will secure. So that is to provide the MFG facility in full, all buildings, utilities, internet, plastering, decoration, etc., prior to the occupation of the 63rd dwelling. The requirement for the library in the MFG facility to be made accessible to the wider public in perpetuity. To ensure that the skills training element of the MFG facility shall remain in use for the provision of education in perpetuity. A clause to secure that if within 10 years of the decision the Class E business units, so those 2 buildings, those 2 two-story buildings proposed under the outline element, if they fail to be in function or use, full or in part, the land in that area shall then revert to public open space use. The incorporation of a reviewing mechanism to ensure the viability of the scheme is reviewed, details to be agreed, and any money is gained if viability exceeds the agreement shall be used for off-site affordable housing provision. The moving of the existing speed limit and the introduction of a new lower speed limit across the entire site frontage. And finally, a financial contribution of £77,000 towards healthcare provision in order to mitigate against the impacts of this proposal, and the contribution to go towards capital funding to increase capacity within the local GP catchment area. So with the above in mind, members are requested to consider officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Yasma. Speakers. Under the first section of speakers, the applicant, agent or representative, I am going to allow 3 speakers this evening, and those speakers will all have 3 minutes. The members of the public that have registered, the 3 will also have 3 minutes. There's only 1 speaker registered to speak against, and no speaker from the town or parish council, and the ward member will have the usual 5 minutes. So if Mr. Holloway is here with us this evening, Mr. Holloway, if you'd like to make yourself comfortable there, and when you're ready, if you'd like to push the button in the middle, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Ralph Holloway, Head of SEND Strategy and Innovation at Essex County Council. One of my roles is the commissioning of specialist provision across Essex, which is becoming an increasingly difficult task because we're at full capacity in all of our special schools. We've had growth across the county, but North East Essex in particular has had the highest growth, and that's forecast to continue due to significant housing development across the quadrant. Marketfield has seen the most significant growth of any special school in Essex. It's gone from, I think, under 200 to almost 450 children and young people. Has expanded into a new build, as you will all know, in Elmstead Market, and has a post-16 provision in Clacton. Again, the growth in Marketfield will continue, but the reason why we support this proposal for the MFG provision is because the young people, when they leave school, quite often fall off a cliff edge. What this proposal will do is give us something completely different to any other provision we've got in Essex. It will give young people a route into employment and develop their own routes into employment. It will give us sustainability in terms of the places and the provision on that site, greater levels of resilience and independence. Effectively, what the provision will do will allow these young people to be productive members of society within their own communities. At the moment, the only alternatives we have to this would be through social care provision, which all of you would probably agree is a drain on society rather than a contributor, or independent provision, quite usually outside of the community and quite probably outside of Essex. So this is, as I said, unique. It's a very innovative approach. It's something that we support for our strategic direction for SEND. routes into preparing for adulthood. It's something that also we think we would like to replicate across Essex. In fact, we're already working with other special schools in very early stages of developing provision of the same sort. The biggest barrier to us doing this as a county council is capital, or rather the lack of capital and the lack of sites. We do not have the ability to grow capacity on our special schools beyond those we have currently. So this is a unique opportunity to develop with funding from an external source. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holloway. Naomi Pudney. Miss Pudney, are you here? Oh, there you are. From Marketfield Grosd, if you'd like to take a seat, and when you're ready, push the button in the middle and you have 3 minutes.
Firstly, just to clarify, on this, Naomi Andrews, I'm under my maiden name for work. Anyway, it was great to see you all this morning. Thank you very much for your time. I would just like to touch on the subject of us looking at a site outside the local plan, because I know the enabling development outside the local plan is a challenging concept. Up until now, we've looked, as the charity, we've looked at 7 alternative sites running feasibility studies. These sites have included areas within Colchester district and Tendring, all of which were either existing properties which would be redeveloped or would be land that was allocated for housing. Because the land was allocated for housing or was already within that use, it would be financially unviable for us to do this. Because the land is not allocated for housing, means that the figures weigh up. With the enabling development, it makes it affordable, and it makes it possible with the amount of housing to deliver something that's exemplar, that something will be complete and we will be able to operate the moment the doors open, and we can focus on developing programs for work which work, rather than having to dedicate time towards raising funds to complete the actual project. Again, working with a partner and a developer such as Landswood enables us to get to this stage. Community groups and charities of our size do not have the available funds to even get to a planning stage, to carry out the surveys that are required, and the expertise to deal with all the parties involved to get to this stage. So I know it's an unusual proposition, it's an unusual plan, but it's all been well considered, and the site has been picked for a reason, and those are the reasons.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gary Smith, OBE. Welcome, Mr. Smith. If you'd like to have a seat near the microphone, and when you're ready, push the button in the centre, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Well, while we're talking about corrections, Carlo talked about my hip replacement. It was my knee, but that's another thing entirely. Yeah. Hips are right, thank you. Well, where to start? I started at Elmstead Marketfield in 1989, before some people around this table were born, I think. And I've been there 11 years, and there was all sorts of fuss about special schools at that time. So I set out a proposal visioning document that I've still got in my hand today, which actually set out looking for employment for young people with additional needs. And I thank you for smiling, and thank you for remembering. And that hasn't changed. So 23 years later, we're ready to go, and this is your chance, my chance as well, but it's really your chance to transform life chances, not just here, but around the country. In 2002, I wrote a vision that said that Marketfield would be a school that was shaped of, I can't say it, that would influence the shape of special education. Haven't managed to do it yet, but again, we can do that now. The harsh, horrendous statistics are that only one in 10 children with additional needs will ever get a chance for employment. So if all of you had a child with special needs, there's a good chance that none of them will get a job. I've got a chap in the corner there, Chris. whose son Ben has got a job. But you know, that is our motivation, because ultimately, like Ralph said, falling off a cliff edge, it's no fun. That I'm known to have said that school days are meant to be the happiest days of your life. They are not meant to be the only ones. This is your chance to make sure that our kids get a chance. Thank you. Oh, sorry, and I've also got other notes. Sorry, I get carried away here. This has got, as far as I've been told, it's got cross-party and cross all sorts of positive support. So, you know, whatever your politics are, this is about young people who deserve a chance. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Members of the public speaking in favour of the application, Mr. David Bullock.
Yeah, I don't know who. Depends, doesn't it?
You have 3 minutes, Mr. Bullock.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm David Bullock. I am a parent. I'm a foster carer of children that have special needs. I also attend lots of network meetings who have children with special needs. And everybody always say, there's this concern it's only 3 sentences. What will happen to my children? So, there is no real solution. We thought there wasn't, but there is now. There's a hope and opportunity where we can support and help these young adults to employment. Marketfield Grows, in collaboration with Hope Learning Community, has an in-depth understanding of what is required. So yeah, this is from my heart. But it's about them. Who will deliver something effective and get these children to add value to our community and district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Mr. Alan Goggin. Mr. Goggin, you have 3 minutes.
I can't follow that. Thanks to the chairman and the committee for allowing me to speak tonight, and I'm speaking as a member of the general public. I have seen at first hand the fantastic results that Marketfield School and the Hope Academy have already achieved and will continue to achieve in Tendring. Indeed, nobody needs to remind Tendring District Council about the school's achievements. They've already acknowledged the achievements. Just to remind you, the school were awarded the Pride of Tendring Award in 2013. Also, when a past chairman of the Tendring was in office, he selected the college as his sole charity. It was the first time, and the only time, that one charity was unanimously approved by all members. TDC has already supported the groundbreaking sixth form college at Jaywick, where already there is employment. there is an excellent coffee shop, open to the public. I can recommend the brownies. We all know what a good job the Marketfield Group are doing. But what happens when they reach 19? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. The charity applying tonight don't want to stop the fantastic job that Marketfield staff already achieve by providing the very best education possible for special students with special needs. What they do want to do is to stop the dreadful situation where 9 out of 10 students who are already been given a brilliant education are then left on the scrap heap of unemployment. Only 1 in 10 of children who go through the special needs system ever have a meaningful employment. Only 1 in 10 adults have anything to look forward to after age 19, as so ably demonstrated by the last speaker. In the 33,740 hectares, or 130 square miles that is tendering, this 5-acre site for the charity is relatively small. However, the effect that it will have on our population is enormous. I urge you to do something really meaningful tonight and agree to this planning permission. It is green, it is generous, it is unique, and it is good. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Goggin. Miss Joanne Matthias, have I pronounced that correctly? Oh, Matthias. I do apologise. You have 3 minutes.
Is that on already? Okay. So I'd like to express my support for this planning
We are now back live online, and I do apologise for the intermission. But as you obviously heard, we had some difficulties with the microphones, and it is unfair to everybody involved when someone can't be heard. So I'm sure you'll allow us those few minutes to get that sorted out, and we have. And one other thing I should have mentioned beforehand is that if you have your phone with you, if you could either turn it off or put it on silent, because I could hear somebody's phone earlier on. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, thank you very much. We shall now continue with member of the public speaking against the application. Mr. Marshall, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for inviting me to speak at this planning meeting. The National Planning Policy states that planning applications should be considered against the development plan. Tendering's development plan is the combined Section 1 and Section 2 adopted local plan 2013 to 33. The full council voted to adopt the Section 2 on Tuesday the 25th of January 22. At the Tuesday 11th of January 22 Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee meeting, the Director of Planning, responding to Carlo Guglielmi, stated there could be departures from the adopted local plans. This hybrid application has more departures from the adopted Section 2 local plan than there are holes in a big block of Swiss cheese. Could the Chair ask the officers how many departures from the adopted Section 2 local plan there are? The Director of Planning has stated Tendering's planning is fair, consistent and reasonable. Could the Chair ask officers what influenced this recommendation for approval? The National Planning Policy states that every application should be considered on their merits. This application has more harm than benefits, and no affordable home contributions are accounted for. There has been a great deal of support for from educational organisations and Essex County Council. These organisations are mainly very remote from the SEN site. Latimer by Carrion have also supported this application, and today Luke Cadman of Latimer by Cadman stated SEN facilities will be provided within the proposed garden community. Therefore, it can be concluded that the SEN part of this application will not be necessary at this application site. The application is outside the development settlement boundary of Elmstead Market and should be refused. How will approving this application affect the 5-year land supply figure? The Hill Group commented on the ownership of the access road in the document list. Has this issue been clarified yet? What was the purpose of the Fenright July 22 document submitted recently? Is it out of date? I recommend that the committee refuse this application, even though Councillor Guglielmi offered guidance to the committee at the 10th of November council meeting recently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. There are no representatives from the parish council. The ward member, Councillor Gary Scott. Councillor Scott, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, councillors, officers and members of the public. I am speaking in favour of this application. This application will be a big boost of Market School. We'll have a farm shop employing students from their school. They will teach students on how to grow fruit and veg and bring new skills to them they can use for going forward for future employment. This application in that section of Elmstead Market has its own community now. As councillors saw today, that Beth Chateau Gardens around there and the Grange there's a nice little community there building along, and they're still building there. and it will coincide, hopefully, if councillors do approve this application, there'll be another community the other side of the road. So they will both be linked in time. There will be highway improvements along this stretch of the road and improvements to local services that will benefit residents on all sides. And this will be something of a unique feature for our part of the world. A developer that's assisting an education facility there to support our younger people to go in the career field in the future. To the dwellings, the style of the dwellings will be the same as you saw today in Chateau Gardens, well designed, in keeping with the area. Small scale industrial units on site will bring in new businesses and jobs, possibly for the youngsters that will be at the place, or bring outside bodies in. Hopefully this will reduce the speed limit on the road as well in Elmsted Market, the A133, because this stretch of the road between Elmsted and Freighting is fast. But this development both sides will in time bring the speed limit down, bring better bus routes for communities on both sides, and also for the new educational facility there, run by Marketfield. This application is nicely laid out, and this will work well in partnership with Marketfield. So you've got residents there and a place for kids to learn, improve their education, and go towards employment. So please support this application. This application is green, it's positive, it's a great application. And I would like to say on the additional sheet, I am chuffed to bits with additional bits that are on the renewable energy and energy efficiencies. Over the last few years, I've had meetings with the developer and other people and Marketfield, and I've been asked this till I'm blue in the face, to have agreement of scheme for water conservation, for grey water recycling, to improve, to secure rainwater that can be used for watering plants, flush the toilets in dwellings and properties. It's a big win, and I'm very grateful for the developer to put them forward. And the provision of fibre broadband for that part of Elmsted Market, which will then lead on to other communities. So thank you, councillors, thank you, officers, and do support this application because it will bring pride to our district. A great institution that Mr. Smith has done over the years. This is great for Elmsted and the surrounding communities. It's great for our future children. Many thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. And I will now go over to our officer, Mr. Yasma, for any replies to the questions and points that were raised by the speakers.
I've picked up three points specifically raised by the speaker against the scheme. So, one, yes, the site is not in the settlement development boundary. So there's one area of conflict insofar as the departure is concerned, and that is the proposal doesn't comply with the statutory plan-led approach for the provision of new housing in the district. So that is the area of policy, the departure. There's also, as identified in the report, conflict with relevant landscape policies in terms of the landscape harm that will ensue along the northern parcel, and the loss of agricultural land is an element that weighs against the proposal. The second point. How much will this contribute to the council's 5-year housing land supply? Now, 5-year housing land supply is not a ceiling, but this proposal will nevertheless contribute 126 dwellings towards the council's 5-year housing land supply, and that is set out in the planning balance section. Not a lot of weight is attributed to that factor because of the council's strong 5-year housing land supply position. And finally, the third thing raised was the Hills objection. That has been comprehensively dealt with under the highways section of your report. But in summary, the Hills Housing Group object to the scheme on the basis that there's potential for future residents of this development proposal, the southern parcel, to use the first access. I think it's called it's something Farm Close. We went down there today. That's as you come from the southeast. It's the first one before you get the Landswood Business Park access point. It's the one just before that on the left. There seems to be a concern that future residents of the southern parcel will take that access and use those local roads to access the 40 properties proposed there. Whilst that may or may not be the case, the proposal is for access to be taken via the existing access point serving the Landswood Business Centre. That's the proposal put in front of members. That's how highways have assessed it, and the scheme is considered to be acceptable from a highway safety point of view in terms of that one access point. And even if there are isolated incidents of future residents using those local roads, we as officers think it's highly unlikely that people will use that first access point en masse, because they are local roads. There's a lot of bends in the roads, and people will naturally access their properties, following the desire lines really, and the quickest and the fastest route, and that would be via Landswood Business Park access and exit point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Yasma. Questions for the officer, members? And following the questions, we will then go into debate. So who's going to kick us off this evening? Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chair. This application has been put forward as an enabling development. Paragraph 208 of the National Planning Policy Framework deals with enabling developments, but refers to enabling developments being to historical buildings, not to others. Can you explain what the view is as to whether this is an enabling development under the NPPF or not, and how we deal with that conflict?
Okay, right. So, in respect of the NPPF, there's two parts of the NPPF that refer to the word enabling. Trouble with the word enabling, it's also a very common English phrase to enable something. So let's not confuse between the two. Enabling in the context of the NPPF is referred to by two paragraphs. Both paragraphs refer to a connection to historic assets. In other words, we can't afford to do up this listed building. Please, can we have a dwelling next door that will pay for it, or something similar? Ultimately, though, the rest of the NPPF is silent on that position. The points of the paragraphs in question, when they talk about enabling, don't say you can't employ enabling for anything else. It just says listed buildings. It is silent. It doesn't say, and by the way, you can't do that for different things. We actually do this for a number of different things. One example is affordable housing. In the NPPF, in the glossary of affordable of the NPPF, it refers to the need to enable a market home to allow for the financial enabling of affordable housing. In your policy, in your local plan, it's taken forward, and that is realised in policy LP6. It does say exactly one thing. It effectively allows you one market home for every two affordable homes for rural exception sites, e.g. outside the settlement boundary. You may find there's lots of other enabling things that the council does. I can give you an example of 106 agreements where we enable development elsewhere for affordable housing, for community centres, for open space, for other things. These are captured by financial contributions, but they are enabling the burden of the development. So there's a different form of enabling there. Therefore, the position, if you were to ask the question, is there anything that specifically allows a point of enabling within the NPPF? The answer is no. What we're dealing with, though, is the point about the Town and Country Planning Act, in terms that your position here is to consider your development plan unless other material considerations indicate otherwise. What you have before you is a balance of material considerations, one of which is the Marketfields site. We are considering those to be significant material considerations that we feel do indicate a departure from the local plan could be lawfully made if that's what members wish to do tonight.
So in reality, we're not looking at an enabling development, we're looking at a balanced situation of benefit and harm in the normal planning balance, not really looking at an enabling development at all.
Sorry, Chair, if I may continue. Forgive me for being blunt, but I think it would be a red herring to continue. We need to avoid the word enabling, ultimately. I think that would be the easiest thing to do. In the context of the NPPF, those two particular paragraphs are relevant to historical context. In this case, we have no historical context. We have no listed building on site or otherwise to enable. So we need to kind of ignore them. I don't often say they're not material considerations, but rarely I always try to say less weight. But in this case, they are not material considerations on the basis that this particular development does not have a context of a listed building to consider that we know of.
Thanks, and your answer, I think, is very helpful to us in terms of how we assess this application. You mentioned weight. Weight is obviously going to be important in this because obviously different things will weigh either for or against the application. Who ultimately decides the weight of any of those issues? Is that the committee? Do we have that role?
So ultimately, your officers, including myself, have provided you a planning balance of what weight we feel, as officers, should be applied. And that is summed up in the report. That is one version of the weighting that we've given the planning balance. You're the decision maker, though, in this case, because this is before you as a committee item, and therefore you either need to agree with the officer's recommendation and our applied weight to the relevant issues, and we're saying the elements that my colleague here has talked about should be given significant weight. We have looked at the harm and we have weighted that accordingly, and we don't feel it outweighs the benefit. But ultimately, you may have a different version of that. That is your debate.
Thank you for that. That's useful.
Any further questions for the officer? Councillor Sudra.
Thank you, Chairman. My question relates to the Essex County Council Ecology holding objection due to insufficient ecological information. Do we have anything to add on to that? Is it still insufficient?
Sorry, apologies, Chair. We've got a few technical issues struggling to share the presentation on the screen. However, I've picked up most of those. So in terms of the ECC ecology position, so they don't actually raise any objections to the content of the ecology reports provided. They seem to have an issue in respect of the potential for those oak and hawthorn trees along the northeastern boundary to provide habitat for bats. Now, those trees are going to be retained, and in fact, the tree planting along that boundary is going to be reinforced with the additional native species of tree planting. These things have been pointed out to ECC Ecology. They also raise a rather technical point in terms of the whether the development will provide suitable mitigation in terms of the impact on nearby Ramsar sites. So the proposal will mitigate against that impact because we've secured RAMS payments for each one of the 126 dwellings proposed. And finally, there's another point, I just need to get to the right area. Yeah, the only difference in terms of those trees along that northeastern boundary is that they will now be included they will be included into the rear gardens of those properties. Those are the properties along the northeastern boundary. So those we have actually specifically asked for that change because previously a long narrow corridor was proposed as a sort of a dog walking area or an extension to the public open space area. But from an urban design / overall general design point of view, those narrow corridors don't generally work as publicly open space areas. So we thought it's better to include those trees into the longer rear gardens of the properties along that boundary. Those trees are protected, so they won't be threatened by this development proposal, and those gardens are quite long, so in terms of the falling distances, it's in excess of 20-30 meters away. So, and they are relatively short oak trees, so we don't feel that with the TPOs in place, those trees will come under threat. Thank you, Chairman. Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is not to the officer as such, it's a question to Mr. Guyver, Planning Director, because mention has been made about the, obviously, our well-established plan, which took some, I'll stand to be corrected, but 14 years, I think, to get the plan to the state that it's at. Was any request for any special sites from Essex County Council, who after all were contributors to the plan? Did the SEND, I think it was called, the head of SEND or anybody else at the time, did they request anything special for this type of school? I'm very much in favour of what's needed, and I can see it now, which I will say is in hindsight. But did we ever have any request in those 14 years to make any special considerations?
Thank you, Councillor White. So we didn't receive representations asking for specific sites for inclusion in the local plan. However, Essex County Council were participants in the infrastructure evidence that sat alongside the local plan. One thing that I would remind members, though, is of course the consultation on the local plan. Although we adopted the local plan 2022, the consultations for the local plan actually took place 2015, 16 and 17, because as you'll recall, there was a very long period of time where we were with the planning inspector before the plan was finally adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guyver. Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chair. Picking up on Councillor Sudra's point, place services are normally used by us to advise on all ecological issues. On the 15th of March, they said, holding objection due to insufficient ecological information on designated sites. We're not satisfied there's sufficient ecological information available for determination of this application. On the 29th of August, they said, holding objection due to insufficient ecological information on European and international designated sites and European protected species. On the 4th of October, they said, holding objection due to insufficient ecological information on designated sites, habitat sites and European protected species. What are we doing to resolve their objection? And if, as they said on the 4th of March, there isn't sufficient ecological information to determine the application, how are we able to proceed?
So the applicants have provided the reports, the required reports, the ecological reports, the preliminary ecological appraisals as part of this planning application. We haven't seen, as part of the final, I mean, there were like 5 or 6 reconsultations during the entire determination period. So 5 or 6 full reconsultations, which included all the statutory consultees, including ECC Ecology, Natural England, County Highways. So as part of the final round of consultation, when all these additional reports have been provided, we have reconsulted ECC Ecology, and they essentially, as far as we could see, they came back with 2 issues. And that was, they were looking for clarification in terms of the potential for those I think they were concerned about us including or seeking changes to include those trees along the northeastern boundary into private rear gardens. Clarification was provided to them that those trees are now protected, because that actually, the serving of the tree preservation order happened during the determination period. In fact, it only happened about a month and a half ago. So we provided them with that clarification. We also provided them with additional drawings and information to demonstrate that the suitable alternative green spaces and the footpaths along that the southeastern part of the site, where the locally equipped area of play, we have provided them with clarity that those footpaths will be in excess of the 2.7 kilometre requirement length. And we also provided them with clarity that internally the development will provide footpaths to link up with that area, as well as the improved footpath along Clacton Road, because the concern seemed to be that there isn't a suitable alternative green space as part of this development proposal. But we feel, having read their emails, that it's down to a misunderstanding perhaps from ECC Ecology in terms of what exactly is proposed here, and the mitigation package to include the RAMS contribution. And finally, just to summarize, we have recommended conditions seeking the ecological enhancement measures to be implemented as part of the development proposal, and details such as sensitive lighting for bats, etc., etc. Thank you, Chair. I think John wants to add, yeah.
So have you reconsulted Place Services with that information that has been given forward?
Yes, we have.
What was the result? Because we don't seem to have it.
Well, yeah.
Okay, do you mind if I could just come in on that one? Obviously, if you're looking at your papers, you've got they've kind of rephrased it as not sufficient ecological information, and unfortunately I disagree with that point slightly. In terms of ecology on site, in respect of the trees, in respect of the bats, in terms of the enhancement, we are satisfied, and they are satisfied, as it says here, that they have got the information necessary and it passed the test, if you like. The bit that we are not in agreement with is that they feel that the site should have more walking space, in effect, to allow residents to walk their dog and move around and enjoy more open space, rather than meaning that they are more likely to go find somewhere else to find their place to walk their dog, which may be a protected site, one of the estuaries where RAM's contributions would be going towards. The trouble with that is it's an unproven concept. You're dealing with individual rights to wish to leave the site and go and walk their dog elsewhere. I have a dog. Unfortunately, I go all over the place walking the dog, whether in fact I can walk around my village sufficiently or not. And I don't have evidence to show me one way or another to argue that point out. This development, though, has got a contribution in any event to those estuaries via RAMs. So therefore, if I was to have an argument at appeal, I would have very little ground in order to do that. We have carried out the appropriate legislations. My colleague here knows the detail of that. But that's the fundamental point in the middle there, that we are at a disagreement. And I don't think how we consult with that, going back and forth, is going to change that position. But we're satisfied what we're recommending to you as approval on that point.
Thank you for that. I wasn't particularly asking about Natural England. I actually had another question about that for later on, but now that you brought it up, I'll bring it up here. The latest from Natural England was on the 21st of August, and it said, Natural England has previously commented on this proposal and made comments to the authority in our response dated 10th of the 3rd, 23, reference number, blah, blah, blah. The information we requested is still needed by Natural England to determine the significance of impact on designated sites. Please note, we're not seeking further information on other aspects of the natural environment, although we may make comments on other issues for our final response. Please reconsult Natural England once this information has been obtained. On receipt of the information requested, we will aim to provide a full response within 21 days of receipt. Has that been done?
We have reconsulted them, and they have, I think, I mean, the situation or the position in terms of the Natural England holding objection is set out in paragraphs 6.134 and 6.135, and it's very similar to what my colleague just explained. There seems to be a disagreement in terms of the quality of the suitable alternative natural green space within the development. However, from a point-by-point technical point of view, the suitable alternative natural green space comply with all the relevant guidance points. For example, the total length of footpaths in the development will exceed the 2.7 kilometers. There is in fact no public footpaths around the site or close to the site for the development to link up with. The nearest footpath, public footpath, is a considerable distance, a very considerable distance away to the northeast and to the northwest. The applicants are providing, will be providing dog waste bins as part of a legal agreement. There's a condition seeking additional tree planting and landscaping. Frankly, we have provided Natural England and ECC Ecology with all this information, and I think with Natural England we haven't had a subsequent response back from them after the last reconsultation. But the position as set out in the report is the position insofar as those two consultees are concerned, insofar as the latest position. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Smith.
Great, can't get that right. On the fibre optic broadband that you mentioned, it says to the best possible speed installed on an open access basis, which currently it says provides speeds greater than 30 megabits per second. Has anyone tested the area around there? What sort of speeds are they likely to get? Will there be a choice of provider, or is it just going to be one provider that comes in and everyone has to do that? And if they use an alternative where it's got, I know it's the Starlink service, if they were offering that, who pays for that? if that's the only way they can get faster access.
So there's quite a few questions in that. In terms of supplier, we as authority can't dictate who is a supplier. That's a market decision. We can't be involved in that. It would be influencing competition and all sorts of things, so we can't get into that. Ultimately, our position is to ensure that the baseline infrastructure is available. We can only go as far as that in the context of ensuring that the provision can be made. This doesn't necessarily ensure that it will be connected and maintained for however long, because we don't have control in that context. So we can only ensure that the infrastructure is in place, but not necessarily can we go much further than that in terms of this particular scheme. You know, that's where we are in the context of that. Does that help, or have I missed something?
No, I think what I was asking for is clarification that we will allow all the different markets to come in, because what I've known has happened in the past is there's just one provider that's being used, and that is a stipulation of moving in. You can only use one provider, and I feel that that should go to all providers. That seems to be my understanding of several other properties that's happened to.
It's not a planning condition that we would impose. We don't impose a restriction on who. If it's imposed by the developer, that's a private legal arrangement between that developer and the occupier of the new house.
Okay, thank you.
Members, are there any further questions for the officer? Councillor Alexander? No? Sorry. Okay. Well, we'll have one more question then from Councillor Everett, and then we will go into debate.
The current GP practices lack the capacity to accommodate the additional residents expected from the proposed development, estimated at approximately 290 individuals. This development would consequently place additional strain on already constrained healthcare services. And so as a result of that 5.6, to mitigate the impacts of this proposal, the developer contribution of £77,000 is required. The payment should be made before commencing the development. Can you confirm that that is going to be made?
Yes, that's been secured. That's the final heads of term on page, under the executive summary of your report. £77,000 to be secured towards healthcare. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Everett, if you wish to continue and ask another question, please go ahead.
Got it. Yep, thank you. The parish council returned a neutral response. They clearly balanced both sides of this, as we're going to have to do tonight. So they said in Précy that they opposed this on one respect because of the extra housing not required, etc., but also balanced that with they supported it very much for the MFG facility. I think that's probably a fair reflection of it. Can I ask you, in terms of weightings, what weighting do you put on the stance of the parish council, and particularly their points?
Well, they are the parish council, so we see them as the voice of the local people. So we apply weight accordingly to that status. They are an important contributory to the planning system. Every parish council is. In terms of the weight that you apply to the various benefits and harmful elements, yeah, that's a matter for you as the decision maker, as the planning committee.
Yeah, right. So the parish council, in terms of they are a third party, ultimately, so all the residents and everybody else here, they are individual third parties. We had representations from various people in respect to this application. All representations are material. That's the reason we consult them. They are a material consideration. I would say that in terms of the specifics of the parish council, they are saying they have a neutral stance. They are saying they neither object or approve the development. Therefore, we can only wait. We consider their opinions in the balance of looking at the application, but it is not neither here or the other. So therefore, it is simply neutral in the balance of considerations from our point of view.
Thanks for that. And in terms of the neighbourhood plan that they put a lot of effort into creating and devising, the state of preparation of that isn't complete, I understand. So what weighting would be given to the conflicts with the neighbourhood plan, please?
Yeah, so it's an emerging neighbourhood plan. So I think we've reached stage 4 of in a 6-stage process, or 3 or 4. We're between 3 and 4. So we give limited at this stage. We give limited weight to the neighbourhood plan because it's not yet adopted, and I don't think it's been through examination. Yeah.
Can I just further to that as well and just say that ultimately the neighbourhood plan, be it an emerging document, is seen in the same light as it is the development plan, and therefore we have a conflict in terms of the local plan, which we have expressly talked about, but there is just to clarify, there is a conflict in respect to the neighbourhood plan that follows on, because of course the neighbourhood plan has to be in line with the local plan in any event. So the conflict is kind of doubled by that effect, but that we're happy and satisfied in that context.
Councillor Everett, yes? No? Right, okay. Any further questions? If not, we will go into debate. No further questions for the officers? Okay. Well, if you do think of any, please go ahead. Okay then, so we are now in the debate section. And before anybody else jumps in, I will say that I kept a completely open mind over this application. And I've listened intently to what was said this morning when we visited the site and what's been said this evening. And my view on this application, I had 2 concerns, which was the departure and the highways issue, the speed of the traffic on that road, which we all saw when we were there this morning. But the officer did give us the overview on the hopefully reduced speed scheme if that goes ahead, which I would like to think that it would, because that's always a concern of ours on this committee, and it has been since I've been on the committee, with the highway safety. But I shall declare now that I shall certainly be supporting this application. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's light. No light. It's dead. Who said no light? Completely put me off my stride here. Thank you. Right. Chair, I go along with entirely of what you said. When I first came in here this morning and hopped on the bus, I never dreamt for one moment that it would bring me so close to my past. Because what I saw before me was 21 years of fostering. And what happens when they do fall off the edge and there's no capture? I would believe profoundly, and this is unusual for me, as you know, I believe profoundly that we were elected to make changes. We were elected to make a difference. We're a difference not only to our wards, but to Tendring as a whole. We now stand on that threshold where we have the opportunity, this is only my opinion, don't you know, but we have the opportunity to make such changes that we could produce almost a precedent that others in our country may wish to follow. There's an old Chinese saying, give a penny, take a penny, or whatever the Chinese currency is. I believe that this is exactly that kind of application, where we give something to, I believe it's a registered charity, to them, they then give back something that we desperately need in our society. And I believe from looking at the at what Councillor Carlo Giuliani sent us, was that the Quality Care Commissioner was urging us in 2019 to go out of our way to ensure that we can make provision for people. Because I worked for so many years with these guys. Every one of them has something to offer, and they can, and they will. I also see that in balance, for the benefits that we will receive outweigh completely what's been highlighted here tonight. It is so important that we grasp this metal. Again, the threshold. This is something new. Although it's enabling or it's a hybrid or whatever you wish to call it, it's a new concept that we are bringing in. Tendring is famous for doing this. We've often done things and it's turned out to be a success. And I believe that this has that same capacity to have that same success. The developers have got one heck of a job in front of them, because they're going to be monitored by our officers, to whom I have, in this instance, such faith. So my proposal is, I go with the officer's recommendation, and if you're ready, Chair, I will want to go with approval on this application.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chair. I want to support this application. I have a son with special needs, who ironically now sits on a planning committee elsewhere in the country. I believe that this provision is groundbreaking and very necessary, and I think as a whole this application benefits in all sorts of ways and should be approved. However, I have some technical considerations that worry me greatly. The ecology situation, as we have outlined in the questions, actually works as disbenefits, and in a fine planning balance that can be quite difficult. The fact that our own advisors, Essex County Council Place Services, are advising us that we do not have enough information with which to make a decision is a legal situation, and means that if we do go ahead tonight and make that decision, we could be open to judicial review. Equally, the Natural England objection, likewise, we are in a situation where we have a statutory consultee who has an objection that has not been resolved. So on the technical side, I have real problems about this application. On the all other sides, I so want this to go ahead. because it is the right thing to do. So I am conflicted, and because of that conflict, I can't at the moment support this application because I think that it could result in serious problems for the authority.
Thank you for raising those points. In respect of police services, well, actually, in respect of both of them, them simply objecting does not make a decision unlawful. The lawful bit is whether or not the council has, in its mind, considered its duty in respect of ecology. And I feel quite strongly, actually, that we have, because we've gone through the police services response. They're not objecting to the scheme. The objection is in respect of beyond the site, there's a consideration that the distances that you can travel around this site, which to be fair is quite a large site, is not sufficient to dissuade people not to leave and walk their dog elsewhere. That's how I understand it, unless my colleague can add more to that. Natural England follow up a similar point, and again, we have no lawful requirement that we need to consider that. We just need to consider that we have expressly considered the duty in respect to habitats, in respect of harm and so forth. Again, we have no direct objection to this scheme, its housing, its commercial element, the Marketfield site, in respect of its impact on this site. If there's anything more you would like to add?
And just in addition to that, I am 100% confident that we have effectively engaged with the Natural England and the ECC ecology concerns. We've demonstrated that we've engaged with it. We have clearly covered it off. The concerns from those two statutory consultees seems to be technical, very technical in nature, and in some respects, perhaps a misunderstanding of what is proposed here and the evolution of the scheme. So we cannot control human behavior, but we feel quite strongly that the applicants have done enough here to provide high quality, suitable, alternative green space, SANGs. And I forgot to point out that in addition to the footpaths in the publicly accessible open space area, they are also providing footpaths along this northern section of the northern parcel along here, which will link up with the MFG facility. So that will provide opportunities for dog walkers, for people to actually walk around the site in a circular fashion, clockwise, anti-clockwise. I've already pointed out that they are meeting all the technical requirements and in terms of providing dog waste bins, additional tree planting, bird and bat boxes. So all those things will be either conditioned or secured in the legal agreement, and we are confident that we have engaged with those issues and satisfactorily addressed it in the concerns. In the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Yarsman. I'm just going to bring in our planning solicitor now, Mrs. Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. The duty that Councillor Everett is referring to is a statutory duty on us as local planning authority, and that's in Regulation 63 of the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulations 2017. And that requires us, where a European site is likely to be affected, there's likely to be a significant effect on a European site, for us to carry out an appropriate assessment of the implications of that plan or project for the site in view of the site's conservation objectives. In making an application, we have to be provided with sufficient information in order to carry out that appropriate assessment. The regulation also requires us as an authority, for the purposes of that assessment, to consult the appropriate nature conservation body, which we have in this case, and have regard to any representations made by that body within such reasonable time as the authority specifies. So we have a duty to carry out an assessment, to consult the appropriate nature conservation body, and also to have regard to any representations that they make. And then the regulation then provides that in light of the conclusions of the assessment, the competent authority may agree to the plan or project, in this case planning application, only after having ascertained that it will not adversely affect the integrity of the European site or European offshore marine site, but we're just dealing with a European site here. And then in considering whether a plan or project will adversely affect the integrity of the site, the competent authority must have regard to the manner in which it is proposed to be carried out, or to any conditions or restrictions subject to which it proposes that the consent, permission or other authorisation should be given. So just to recap, we have to carry out an appropriate assessment. We have a legal duty to do that. We must consult the appropriate nature conservation body. We have to have regard to their response in respect of that. And then as local planning authority, we have to decide if having carried out that assessment and having taken into account those comments by the nature conservation body, that we're satisfied that there will not be an adverse effect on the integrity of the European site. And in doing so, we can take into account any conditions, how the manner in which the development will be undertaken, and for example, other restrictions like Section 106 obligations. So that's the statutory duty in Regulation 63.
Thank you. So I think I've got my head around that. So as long as we've asked them and we've considered their response, we can ignore them.
I mean, obviously, it's the nature conservation body's representations are, something that, not to be lightly disregarded, obviously, and that, you need to give them due weight consideration in your consideration. But the regulation requires us to have regard, and, as I say, the weight to be given to that is a matter for you as decision maker. The officers have explained why they feel that in this particular case they are still able to recommend approval, and they have come to the conclusion that despite those comments, the outstanding concerns, that they feel that there is going to be no adverse effect. But that's a decision for you as decision maker this evening.
Thank you. That's very helpful indeed. So basically, we just put that into the planning balance, and we get to the planning balance and look at what we feel the weights are of all of those things.
Yes, and also as the officers have set out in their report, you may disagree with that. That's for you as decision maker, but you have to satisfy yourself it will not adversely affect the integrity of the European site.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Councillor White and then Councillor McWilliams.
Thank you, Chairman. First thing, before I'm still sitting on the balance problems, but the first thing I want to do and put on record is my praise to the officer who wrote this report. I think in my, I hate to say, 10 years of planning at least, I've never seen such a well-balanced report. And so I'd like to praise him. Now, I am still sitting on the fence because I don't want to see anything go outside the development plan. Like Councillor Everett, I can see the need, very much so, for a development of this type. But for sake of argument, if you look at the size of the development, it could easily fit in the other side of the road, and we wouldn't then be breaking the local plan. I'm talking about the size of the SEN development. It could fit the other side of the road, and we've heard tonight too from Mr. Marshall, I think, that there is a possibility of a very suitable site on the large development between Elmstead and Colchester. Now, that's not confirmed, but it came up in conversation. So there again, there would be another site in this area between Colchester and Tendring, which could suit both of those areas and still not break our local plan. The local plan, and now we've heard tonight that the neighbourhood plan, it would be breaking that as well, which hasn't been recommended yet. We've also heard that we must treat this not as an enabling development, but financially, we know it is an enabling development because the development can't be done unless we get some money for it. Which, again, we've heard Essex County Council can't provide. So I am stuck, and funny enough, like Councillor Everett, I have to report that I've got 3 special needs grandchildren, not in this part of Essex, but they're going to want some special attention when they get older. And I just don't know quite where they would go. So there is a definite need for this, but I don't find that this is the place for it. I don't find after 14 years we've got this plan in place, and I don't think that we want to break it. It would be used, just as Councillor Everett and myself have been searching to find if there was any other enabling developments other than those going for history. And I can't find them, but you can bet your bottom dollar that if we are liking to pass this tonight, and then it'll become on the statute book, and other people who want to break the rules and say, well, this is for a financial reason. And it worries me. So at the present moment, I certainly am still sitting on the fence, and certainly couldn't be prepared to second if you were looking for a seconder. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor McWilliams.
Thank you, Chair. I thank everybody, especially the officers, for what you've put us through today. My brain's been really working overtime, and that does take a lot of effort. I've written an awful lot of notes here, and I do appreciate, and having known Market Field for some considerable time now, how important their work is and what they have done for the youngsters in our area. I personally cannot see a problem with this in any way whatsoever, and I thank officers for the hard work that they've done in responding to us today as well, and also to the solicitor for giving us some reassurance over certain facts and matters as well. I therefore do support my colleague, Councillor Alexander, and if Councillor, excuse me, if you didn't actually second the, you didn't, I will second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McWilliams. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. My proposal still stands. We've heard an awful lot on this debate, but in any groundbreaking advancement that we make as a council, which is contrary to anything we might have done before. I have said this so many times before in general applications. No matter how much knowledge that we have, and like my colleagues here, We research this on a constant basis on the internet. I go to bed with the MPPF, hoping to gain more and more experience, but we are not planning officers. And in this case, we must see our way to fall upon the sword of our officers to guide us through this. Because we hear about financial gain. I don't see financial gain when one is being used to balance the other. That to me is not a financial gain. That is, in my mind, the correct way forward, maybe on applications of the future. We are changing. Everything in our country, in our world changes. And we're now in that part where we are changing. So do we change with it, or do we just remain stagnant? As I say, my proposal of acceptance of the officer's approval still stands, and I think maybe we could get this over and done with, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Well, the current situation is that we do have a proposer and we also have a seconder, and that is to approve this application as per the recommendation and the updates on the update sheet, the changes to condition on. Right, on page 4, we have, I think it's a misprint, so I'll just hand over to Mrs. Fisher for a moment.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, on page 4 of your report is the recommendation, which is subject to the changes on the update sheet. And I just noticed in paragraph 2 of the resolution, it refers to conditions at paragraph 8.2 of your report, but it should be 7.2 of your report. It's just a small point.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. And it's a small number, but very significant in this case. So as I was saying, we have a proposer for approval, Councillor Alexander, and we have a seconder, Councillor Williams. So I'm quite happy now to go to the vote. Councillor Alexander is for approval.
For.
Councillor Everett.
Abstain.
Councillor McWilliams.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Sudra.
For.
Councillor White.
Abstain.
Councillor Wiggins.
For.
And I am voting for approval. So this application is approved. Thank you, members, and thank you everybody who has attended this evening. That just leaves me to give you the date for the next Planning Committee meeting, which will be held on the 19th of December. So thank you to everybody who tuned in to our live stream, and also those of you here tonight, have a safe journey home. Thank you.